3 days after I buried my wife, her cardiologist called me. I was still in the same clothes I'd worn to the funeral. I hadn't been able to make myself change them. Margaret had picked them out for me the last Christmas before she got sick. Charcoal gray slacks. A white button-down, she said, made me look distinguished. I'd been sitting at the kitchen table for most of the morning, staring at the coffee maker like I expected it to do something interesting, when my phone buzzed against the wood. I almost didn't pick up. The number wasn't saved, but I recognized the area code as local. I figured it was another casserole offer from someone at church, or maybe the funeral home with a final invoice question. I picked up because ignoring things felt like too much effort. Mr. Calloway? The voice was careful, measured, the kind of careful that people use when they're about to say something they've been rehearsing. This is Dr. Elliot Marsh. I was Patricia's cardiologist at Lakeview Medical. I know who you are, I said. My voice came out rougher than I meant it to. You treated her for 2 years. Yes, sir. I want to start by saying how sorry I am for your loss. Patricia was a remarkable woman. There was a pause that lasted just a beat too long. Mr. Calloway, I need to ask you something, and I want you to hear me out completely before you respond. I pulled the phone tighter against my ear. There's a discrepancy, he said, in Patricia's final blood work. I've been looking at it since the day she passed, and I've spoken with 2 colleagues. I don't think what happened to your wife was a natural cardiac event. Friends, I want you to understand something about what that sentence did to me. I was 63 years old. I had just watched the woman I loved for 39 years lowered into the ground in Millbrook Cemetery on a Tuesday morning, with a sky so gray it looked painted. I had shaken hands with the pastor and thanked people for coming, and stood there while our daughter Ashley placed a single white lily on the casket. And then I had come home and sat in this kitchen and tried to figure out how to be a person without the other person who made me one. And this man on the phone was telling me her death wasn't what we thought it was. What kind of discrepancy? I said. I'd rather not discuss this over the phone. I know this is a tremendous imposition given what you're going through, but I need you to come to my office, today if possible. He paused again. Mr. Calloway, please don't mention this call to anyone in your family. Not yet. I want to explain why, when I see you. I sat in my car in the driveway for 4 minutes before I could make myself drive. Let me tell you about Patricia. She was 59 years old, which I know sounds young to some of you and ancient to others, but I want you to picture her the way I always did, laughing in the kitchen with flour on her hands, or reading on the back porch with her glasses pushed up on her forehead, or dancing badly and on purpose to embarrass our kids at family gatherings. She was a second-grade teacher for 26 years. She coached the after-school reading program every fall. She made birthday cards by hand for every student in her class, every single year. She was not a sick woman. She was not a fragile woman. That's why the heart issues surprised us both when they started 18 months ago. Shortness of breath, fatigue, an irregular rhythm that Dr. Marsh caught on a routine EKG. He put her on medication, adjusted it over time, and told us it was manageable. Serious, but manageable. We had no reason not to believe him. Our daughter Ashley was 29, lived 40 minutes away in Clarksburg, and had always been close to her mother. When Patricia's health started declining, Ashley stepped in with what I can only describe as extraordinary attentiveness. She drove her to appointments. She researched medications. She organized Patricia's pill organizer every Sunday evening, which Patricia let her do because Ashley had a degree in nursing administration and because it was one less thing to worry about. I thought it was love. I told Ashley more than once that she was a good daughter. Her boyfriend Derek was 32. He'd been around for about 2 years. Quiet, polite, remembered to take his shoes off at the door. I didn't know much about him, but I didn't know enough to distrust him either. He had a job in financial services, which I didn't understand well enough to ask smart questions about. Dr. Marsh's office was a 12-minute drive. I made it in 9. He met me himself in the waiting room, which I'd never seen him do before. He was a tall man in his 50s, with reading glasses on a chain around his neck, and he looked like he hadn't slept. He shook my hand and held it a second longer than a handshake requires, and then he walked me back to his office, not an exam room, his actual office, with framed diplomas and a desk with too many folders on it, and he closed the door. He didn't offer coffee. He just sat down across from me and opened a file. In the last 6 weeks of Patricia's life, he said, her blood work showed elevated digoxin levels on 3 separate draws. He turned the file to face me. I looked at numbers that meant nothing to me. Digoxin is one of the medications I prescribed for her arrhythmia. At the correct dose, it regulates the heart. At elevated levels, it can cause exactly the kind of cardiac event we attributed to her death. I stared at him. You're saying she had too much. I'm saying she had significantly too much, and I'm saying that her dosage hadn't changed. I didn't change her prescription. So the question becomes, where was the extra coming from? He leaned forward. Mr. Calloway, Patricia mentioned to me at her last appointment, about 2 weeks before she died, that she'd been feeling more fatigued than usual and that she'd had some nausea. Those are symptoms I should have caught as elevation warning signs. I told her it was likely the progression of her condition. He stopped, took off his glasses and set them on the desk. I want to be honest with you. I missed it, and I'm sorry. Who was handling her medication? I said. It wasn't really a question. He looked at me carefully. She told me her daughter had been helping her manage it, said she appreciated having the help. I drove home in silence. I don't remember most of it. Here is what I did not do. I did not call Ashley. I did not call anyone. I went home and I sat in the kitchen again, and I looked at the pill organizer on the counter. Pale blue plastic, the days of the week printed on each compartment in white letters, and I thought about the fact that Ashley had filled it the Sunday before Patricia died, and the Sunday before that, and the Sunday before that. Patricia had said something to me in October, about 5 weeks before she passed. We were in bed, and I thought she was asleep. And then she said quietly, into the dark, Tom, do you think Dr. Marsh would change my medication if I asked him to? I'd asked her why she'd want to change it. She'd said she wasn't sure it was working the way it used to. I told her to bring it up at her next appointment. She said she would. She didn't say anything else, and I didn't push. I've thought about that moment every day since Dr. Marsh called me. Patricia knew something was wrong. I believe that now. I think she suspected, and I think she was frightened, and I think she didn't want to believe what she was starting to piece together because believing it would mean believing that her own daughter was capable of something monstrous, and so she stayed quiet. She went on taking her pills from the organizer that Ashley filled. She brought it up sideways in the dark one night, and when I didn't hear what she was really saying, she let it go. That is the thing that breaks me open, friends, not the betrayal. The silence she must have kept to protect herself from having to name it. I did not sleep that night. I lay in our bed on my side and stared at her side and tried to remember. Every Sunday evening, I'd watched Ashley sit at the kitchen table with that pill organizer, and I tried to remember if I'd ever watched closely enough to notice anything. I hadn't. I'd trusted her. We both had. The next morning, I called a lawyer, a friend of a friend, a woman named Sandra Pelletier, who handled estate cases and had, her friend told me, also worked on a medical malpractice case that involved a similar situation. I told her everything. She was quiet for most of it. At the end, she said, "Don't touch the pill organizer. Don't move it. And don't tell your daughter you've spoken to anyone. Can you do that?" I told her I could. Sandra moved quickly. Within 48 hours, she had connected Dr. Marsh with the county medical examiner's office, and within a week, there was paperwork in motion for an exhumation. If you've never had someone tell you that your wife's body is going to be exhumed, I don't have words for it that are adequate. I signed what they needed me to sign. I didn't tell anyone. Ashley called me twice that week. Normal calls. How was I eating? Had I gone through Mom's closet yet? Did I want her and Derek to come for dinner Sunday? I said I was fine and that the closet could wait, and yes, Sunday would be good. I want you to imagine sitting across a dinner table from your daughter, who you taught to ride a bike, who you drove to soccer practice, who cried at her high school graduation and held your hand while knowing what I knew, while watching her pass the breadbasket to Derek, while listening to her laugh at something on her phone, while watching her stack the plates afterward with the comfortable ease of someone who feels completely, utterly safe. I didn't eat much. She noticed and said I was still grieving and rubbed my arm. I said yes. That was probably it. The toxicology results from the exhumation came back 17 days after Patricia's burial. Dr. Marsh called me first, and then Sandra called me, and then Sandra told me what was going to happen next. The digoxin levels in Patricia's tissue were consistent with chronic elevation over a period of at least 4 to 6 weeks. The concentration was more than 3 times the therapeutic range. The medical examiner amended the cause of death. Sandra also asked me about the finances. I hadn't thought to look. When I did, Friends, when I sat down and actually pulled up our accounts and went through the records, I found that approximately $41,000 had been moved out of Patricia's personal savings account over the previous 8 months. Small transfers spread across different dates. Nothing that would flag individually. Her account, not our joint one. Her name only. I hadn't had access to monitor it without her login, and honestly, I'd never needed to. Patricia had added Ashley as an account contact 2 years ago, after the first cardiac episode, to handle things if there was ever an emergency. Ashley had been using that access since January. I also found paperwork documents I'd never seen related to a beneficiary change on Patricia's life insurance policy. The change had been initiated 11 months ago. Patricia's signature was on it, but when Sandra had a handwriting analyst look at it, the analyst said it was inconsistent with Patricia's authentic signature on other documents from the same period. The policy was for $212,000. Ashley was the sole named beneficiary. She had been before, split with me. Now it was her name only. Derek's address was listed as the mailing contact. I need to stop here for a moment and tell you something, because some of you are probably asking yourself the same question the people close to me asked when this all came out. You're wondering why Patricia kept taking the medication if she suspected something was off. I've wrestled with this more than anything else in this entire story, and what I've come to believe is this. She didn't know for certain. She suspected, the way you suspect a thing that your whole self is fighting against knowing. She was 59 years old, and she loved her daughter, and she had loved her for 29 years. And the idea that Ashley could be doing this to her on purpose was so far outside anything Patricia could reconcile with the person she knew that she kept reaching for another explanation. Maybe she was imagining it. Maybe the medication always made her feel this way. Maybe she just needed to ask Dr. Marsh at the next appointment. And she was also, I think, protecting me. She didn't want to bring this to me without being sure, because she knew what it would do to me to hear it. She was still trying to take care of me, even then. That's Patricia. That's who she was until the end. The authorities moved on a Thursday morning. Sandra had been in contact with the detective assigned to the case, a woman named Kowalski, who was thorough and methodical and explained everything to me in plain language before anything happened. Ashley and Derek were arrested separately. Ashley at the elementary school, where she worked as an administrator, Derek at his office. The pill organizer had been collected weeks earlier, and the lab found a pattern of double dosing on specific days that correlated with the timing of the bloodwork spikes. Derek had done the financial side, Ashley had done the medication. A text message exchange between them retrieved from Derek's phone showed that the plan had been running for 8 months, calibrated to look like a natural deterioration of Patricia's existing heart condition. Derek had researched digoxin toxicity online. The search history was dated. There was a message from Ashley that said, and I'm telling you this because it matters. It said, she keeps asking questions. We need to move faster. She keeps asking questions. My Patricia, trying to understand what was happening to her own body, was considered a logistical problem to be worked around. Ashley was charged with second-degree murder and elder financial abuse. Derek was charged with second-degree murder and wire fraud. The cousin, Derek's cousin, a pharmacy technician named Ray, who had helped with acquiring additional medication outside the normal prescription cycle, was charged as an accessory. I didn't go to the arraignment. Sandra went. I stayed home. In the months that followed, I learned things about grief that I didn't know before. I'd lost my parents. I'd lost a close friend to cancer in my 50s. I thought I understood loss in the way that you think you understand a foreign country from reading about it. What I found after Patricia was something different, a rearrangement of the whole interior of a life. The mornings were hardest. She was always the one awake first. I kept making 2 cups of coffee for the first month before I could make myself stop. I was also rebuilding something, and I want to be careful about how I say this, but I was rebuilding my understanding of the years I'd had with her. Because Ashley's arrest changed the memory of Patricia's last 18 months, I went back through everything, the appointments, the things Patricia said, the moments I hadn't fully registered, and I tried to see what I'd missed. And what I found, mostly, was that Patricia had been working very hard to carry something terrible without letting me see it. I found her journal in the nightstand. I hadn't opened that drawer in the 3 months since she passed, because some things feel private even in absence. She'd written about the fatigue in it. She'd written that she felt like something was wrong but couldn't name it. She'd written, on a page dated 3 weeks before she died, I'm going to ask Tom tonight. I've been putting it off. I need to just ask him. She never asked me. I don't know why she didn't that night. I don't know if I seemed tired or preoccupied or if she just lost her nerve at the last moment. What I know is that she was trying to get to me, and she ran out of time. The trial was 14 months after her death. The evidence was substantial. Dr. Marsh testified. The handwriting analyst testified. Detective Kowalski presented the phone records, and the search history, and the financial transfers. The pharmacy technician Ray pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence and testified against Ashley and Derek. His testimony established the timeline and the method in clinical detail. Ashley was convicted of second-degree murder and 2 counts of elder financial abuse. She was sentenced to 22 years. Derek was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 26 years. The sentences were not commuted. I was told they would likely serve the bulk of them. The life insurance claim was denied based on the criminal conviction. The money Patricia had saved, the $41,000, was recovered through the civil proceedings. Sandra handled it with the kind of quiet competence that I will be grateful for the rest of my life. I established a reading program fund at the elementary school where Patricia taught. It covers books for kids in the after-school program every fall, the same one she ran for 26 years. The school's principal, a woman named Gay, cried when I told her. She said Patricia was the kind of teacher who made students feel like their favorite stories belonged to them personally. That sounded right to me. I'm 64 now. I live in the same house because I'm not ready to leave it, and I may never be. And because Patricia is in every corner of it, and some mornings that's painful, and some mornings it's the only thing that keeps the day moving. I make 1 cup of coffee now. Most days that's fine. There are things I wish I'd done differently. I wish I'd listened more carefully in that dark bedroom in October. I wish I'd noticed what Ashley was doing at that kitchen table on Sunday evenings. I wish I'd understood that the questions Patricia was asking out loud were smaller versions of something much larger she was afraid to put into words. But here's what I know now that I didn't know before. Patricia was not passive. She was not a woman who simply accepted what was happening to her. She was putting pieces together. She was working up to telling me. She was a woman who had loved and protected everyone in her life for 59 years, and even at the end, she was still trying to do it carefully and without causing panic. She just needed a little more time, and she didn't have it. If you take one thing from this story, friends, I hope it's this. When someone you love tells you something feels wrong, even sideways, even at midnight when you're half asleep, stop. Pay attention. Ask the next question. Don't wait for them to have the whole story figured out before you take it seriously. Patricia was trying to get to me. I just didn't hear her soon enough. I hear her now.